Then the Holy One saw everything that they had made and found it very good. And then the Holy One said, "This is a beautiful world I have given you. Take good care of it. Do not ruin it. It is said, before the world was created, the Holy One kept creating worlds and destroying them. Finally, the Holy One created this one and was satisfied. The Holy One said to Adam and Eve, 'This is the last world I shall make. I place it in your hands. Hold it in trust.'" I'd like to welcome Leonard Higgins and Tharp to come forward this morning. I don't know what order you're going in. You two have figured it out. If you want to know who these two people are, I believe that they're explained in your order of service.
Good morning. My name is Tharp. I'm the program director of the Unitarian Universalist Ministry for Earth, and I'm from Texas. We have a small office in Portland, Oregon. And before I begin my reflection, I just want to point you to this order of service insert from Ministry for Earth. If you wish to join, there's a form you can fill out on the back. Please don't get distracted by this. You can fill it out after the service, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. It's good to be with you all. 6 years ago, in the spring of 2013, I was 1 year out of college and dividing my time between resisting the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline through East Texas and working part-time as a program leader for the Girl Scouts. One very rainy morning, I was leading a program for 4th and 5th grade girls from a public school in Dallas who came to our Girl Scout camp for morning activities and then would go back to school after lunch. The programs went well, the girls ate lunch, and before long, they were on their bus again, heading back to school. Meanwhile, I was back in the cafeteria digging through the trash cans and pulling mostly full water bottles out of the trash, emptying the water out onto the soil to save it from the discomfort of a plastic prison in the Duncanville landfill. I started feeling pretty bummed out, thinking about all the reasons why these kids have come to see water, one of the most important and life-giving elements on our planet, as something that comes wrapped in plastic and something that you throw in a trash can when you aren't thirsty anymore in a moment. In that moment, the water bottles were a small but very symbolic representation of the disconnection that our society has to our place in the ecosystems that sustain us. This is all they know. We've got to teach them better, I thought, as I emptied those water bottles one after another. Pretty soon, I was driving out of the camp feeling really sad and totally ready for a nap, and I see something just lying in the middle of the road, and it looks like a flyer that we had just handed to the girls on their way out the door. Out of continued exasperation and that ingrained Girl Scout promise to leave a place cleaner than I found it, I stop my car and I run through torrential rain to pick up this piece of paper. When I get back to my car and I unfold the flyer, I find something I never expected. Wrapped up in that summer camp advertisement was a soaking wet piece of notebook paper with this prophetic story written on it in pencil. My whole mood, in fact, my whole spirit shifted from despair to wonder and amazement as I read this soggy, delicate little piece of paper. And I must admit that I've lost it in the years since, or else I would read it to you verbatim. But to paraphrase, once upon a time, humanity used to live in peace and connection with the earth, but then we lost our connection We started to take the earth for granted until things got so bad that it became hard for humanity to live. People suffered and got sick. Eventually, humanity makes amends with the earth and finds balance again. Now, this was truly one of the most ephemeral moments of my life, because here I am having this one-person pity party about how water is trashed and taken for granted and the kids don't understand. And on this bus full of kids that I just cleaned up after is this 8 or 9-year-old girl who pencils down this prophetic, universal story about repairing our connection with the earth. And then she just tosses it out of a bus window into the rain, with no way of knowing that I would stop my car and pick it up 10 minutes later, reading exactly the words that I needed to hear in that moment. I still wonder, were her actions a prayer? Did her classmates make fun of her story and she threw it out the window in frustration? Or was she tossing out a first draft? I guess it doesn't matter. I learned that day that wisdom and grace and serendipity have a way of showing up unexpectedly and in many ways, shapes, and sizes. And that every gaggle of 8-year-olds probably has at least one prophet among them. But let's talk about this story, or prophecy, if you will. I've heard it many ways from many sources since this day 6 years ago. This, for example, is an excerpt from The Sacred Tree, Reflections on Native American Spirituality by Phil Lane Jr., Judy Bopp, Michael Bopp, Lee Brown, and elders. For all the people of the earth, the Creator has planted a sacred tree under which they may gather, and there find healing, power, wisdom, and security. The roots of this tree spread deep into the body of Mother Earth. Its branches reach upward like hands praying to Father Sky. The fruits of this tree are the good things the Creator has given to the people, teachings that show the path to love, compassion, generosity, patience, wisdom, justice, courage, respect, humility, and many other wonderful gifts. The ancient ones taught us that the life of the tree is the life of the people. If the people wander far away from the protective shadow of the tree, if they forget to seek the nourishment of its fruit, or if they should turn against the tree and attempt to destroy it, great sorrow will fall upon the people. Many will become sick at heart. The people will lose their power. They will cease to dream dreams and see visions. They will begin to quarrel among themselves over worthless trifles. They will become unable to tell the truth and to deal with each other honestly. They will forget how to survive in their own land. Their lives will become filled with anger and gloom. Little by little, they will poison themselves and all they touch. It was foretold that these things would come to pass, but that the tree would never die. And as long as the tree lives, the people live. It was also foretold that the day would come when the people would awaken as if from a long, drugged sleep, that they would begin timidly at first, but then with a great urgency to search again for the sacred tree. I like this story. It's hard, but I like this story because I question pretty much every day of my life whether humanity will plunge this planet into climate chaos and mass ecological extinction, or whether we will transform our habits, our systems, our spirits on the timeline and the scale required to stop the worst from happening. This prophecy validates what I see in the world. It gives me hope that this isn't our only option, and most importantly, it affirms that mass collective action and transformation to search again for the sacred tree is our way forward. our way forward, and also our way back. As the program director of the Unitarian Universalist Ministry for Earth, I'm compelled to do my work by a vision of a fortified, networked, prophetic, and transformative Unitarian Universalist climate justice ministry that is responding to our ecological crisis on the scale required. This faith tradition, this community, is fertile ground for personal and social transformation. Our call as Unitarian Universalists is to create climate justice. Gus Speth, who helped found the Natural Resources Defense Council and was dean of the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, tells a British radio presenter in 2013, "I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address these problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy, and to deal with these, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that." As people of faith, we know spiritual and cultural transformation as a tradition. Our call as Unitarian Universalists is to create climate justice. We landed in this mess of an ecological crisis through a culture and a widespread paradigm of exploitation. Exploitation of the earth, of workers, of women, of poor communities, of the global South and the global majority of non-white people. This is the root cause of the climate crisis. Behind the greenhouse gas emissions, behind the deforestation, behind it all is this cultural paradigm of exploitation. As people of faith, as a community of faith, we have an important role to play in changing our culture away from exploitation and towards regeneration, balance, and care for our living earth. Our call is to create climate justice. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leonard Higgins, and I'm really honored to be here with Ali and with Levi. We're going to be visiting other churches for the next few weeks and then on to GA. And I'm especially glad to be able to introduce myself to you, my new church home. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I've got an outline for what I'm going to say. It's something that I actually do. My partner said she does each day. Maybe you do too. It's just 4 questions. It's, who am I? Why am I here? What do I want? And what am I thankful for? And so I'm also here not just on behalf of myself, but also, as Ali mentioned, on behalf of the UU Ministry for Earth. And one of the roles that I play is as a board member for that organization and supporting the work that Ali does and that a growing network of UUs and other people of faith are doing to, as Ali says, create climate justice. And so I'm 67 years old. I've got 5 kids. I've got 2 grandkids. And one of my grandkids, Brandon, is on the autism scale. And you know, observing what he's like and seeing him as he's beginning to engage with life, I see that I have some of those characteristics. And I some of them are characteristics that I've felt ashamed of or felt like I needed to purge, needed to grow, to move beyond them. And I have to say, I've developed more of an appreciation for some of those characteristics. In fact, one of the people that is at the top of my list in terms of people that I admire is a 16-year-old autistic girl that probably many of you have heard that lives in Sweden, Greta Thunberg. And with autism comes a clarity of understanding and a clarity of action. And so I encourage you to Google Greta Thunberg and listen to what she has to say. She's become quite powerful on the world stage for climate justice. And so I've been a member of the Corvallis UU. I lived most of my life in Corvallis and still have strong connections with the folks there. Quite a good climate justice committee in that fellowship. And I've now, with my partner Angela, could you raise your hand, Angela? We now live in Eugene, and this is becoming my church home. I'm so appreciative of Reverend Lowe, and I've had some interaction with Reverend Sarah, and I'm just appreciative of the spirit and the space that's created here for fellowship. So why am I here? The biggest reason, both metaphysically and why I'm here doing something I hate to do, which is being in front of a group of people and talking, is that what I see around me is a true emergency. We are in the last years where we as people have a chance to save our future. And it's not just like I am working for my grandkids and my family and my community. We're in a place where we may lose the whole legacy of humanity, and I treasure that. So much of our culture, so much of who we are as people is built on the foundation of who came before us. And as I'm at the end of my life, I have perhaps a decade or two, we don't know for sure. Part of what I went through is thinking about what my legacy was. What would I leave behind for my family? And what place would I have just in our history? And it's bad enough to contemplate that my grandchildren may not have a future, but to contemplate that there may not be any future as we've known it. And I, in my autistic way, I look at what the scientists have said. I look at the 97% consensus that they have that we're headed for catastrophe. And this is, even a consensus of scientists who are working, as you use, if the whole congregation gets together, or even a small group of 9 or 10 people, the difficulty of coming to an agreement on a resolution or a plan, any of those kind of things. You have to sort of flatten it out to get everybody to agree to it. Well, there are hundreds, perhaps thousands of people around the world that are involved in coming out with these IPCC reports that we count on to tell us what's the state of the science, what is the future going to look like. And when they do that, they end up, just by the nature of the process, watering down some of the findings. And so even with that consensus in 2018 on what we have in front of us, they told us that we've got about 12 years. And I have to tell you, I cringe when I hear people say, oh, we've got 12 years. Well, we don't have 12 years. What that report said is that we've got 12 years to accomplish a large drawdown, a large cut in the amount of carbon emissions that we do each year. And so over the course of the last 30 years, where we started out at something like 20 billion tons of carbon emitted into the atmosphere. I may not be exactly, the statistics aren't my forte, but it's in that general area. Instead of dropping down, as scientists told us that we needed to do, we've ramped from that up to, in 2018, worldwide, we emitted about 37 billion tons of carbon. And so the graph, the slope of that trend is going upward at a pretty sharp angle. And what the IPCC told us is that starting right away in 2018, we need to do a sharp decrease that looks like this through cutting something on the order of 45% of emissions by 2030, and then be down to near zero emissions by 2050. Well, not only do we see our past 30 years and the challenge that we've had to begin that and the knowledge of how difficult it is, but we see that we don't have much time. And so I'm here because I see an emergency and I don't see the people around me. I don't see the leaders. I don't see my community. There's many of you, I'm not at all criticizing you. This is a difficult time and a difficult place to really cut back on our carbon emissions. Our whole lifestyle rests on the automobile, rests on plane travel, rests on the generation of energy. We're used to just using so much energy. That's part of why I'm really worried. There shouldn't be anything else on the news, as Greta says, except this emergency that we're in. Every single day, from my perspective, and I hope yours in the next weeks, it'll begin a situation where all of us are asking, what can I do? How can I push the leaders to take the concerted global action that we need? And how can I in my own life work toward that? And so that's why I'm here. And the next question then is, what do I want? And don't my chosen work is what's called nonviolent direct action, and that's in a peaceful, even prayerful way to say, no, I'm not going to accept this harm. In my case, I locked down to a large kind of truck convoy hauling tar sands mining equipment along with tribal members and a friend, and we stopped that for a day. 200 of us sat on railroad tracks and blocked an oil trains bringing crude oil to refineries. In 2016, with 4 friends, we shut down all of the pipelines carrying tar sands oil into the US for a day. All of those really in themselves, they're no more apt to turn the corner than the things that all of you in this room are doing every day. But they represent what needs to happen, is that we not only need to stop the new infrastructure and the ways of life that I'll just call business as usual, we need to do things that reduce the amount of fossil fuels we're using every day. We need to do things like plant trees and protect forests that draw that carbon back out of the atmosphere. So what I want, and the things that all of us are capable of are so diverse, and it's that those differences that make how we work together so powerful. And so some people have talents in the area of art and in the area, whether it's visual arts or poetry or whatever, or storytelling. Others of us, like myself, want to do something more active. It gives us a sense of agency, a sense of meaning. Others minister to the needs, to our spiritual, to our emotional needs. The worship here each Sunday is so important to doing what we need to do and recognizing the meaning and recognizing the value in doing everything that we can to save what we love. And then finally, what am I thankful for? I'm very thankful for this moment in time. I have to tell you that in the process of doing everything that I can individually, it became clear I needed to do that in community. I needed to do that working with other people. And I've never had the kind of community and connection that I have now doing climate activism. And so I don't want you to feel like that you're having to give up something, because what we have right now is really not as beautiful, not as precious, not as compelling as what we could step into working together to save what we love. And so I'll just close saying that both individually and as an organization, that Ministry for Earth sees where we are and sees what we need to do, and would like you, if you're doing everything you can, that's wonderful, and I'm not at all saying that you're not. If there's more that you can do, whether it's direct action like me, whether it's ministry for people that are doing other things, whether it's inspiring with art, whether it's donating, please do that.